After caring for my paralyzed father for 12 years, my brother flew in for the funeral, claimed everything, and kicked me out of the house that still smelled like our dad. He yelled, "You just wiped his mouth, I handled his legacy." As I sat on the curb holding my father's urn, I whispered, "You forgot one thing. 12 years of my life, gone in the blink of an eye. 12 long years spent in that small, 2-bedroom house on the corner of Maple Street in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. A house that smelled like Dad, like old cologne, coffee grounds, and those worn leather chairs he loved. A house filled with memories, our childhood photos on the wall, the old clock that chimed every hour, the creaky floorboards that groaned when you stepped just right. That house was my whole world for over a decade. And now, it was all slipping through my fingers. I sat on the curb outside, gripping the urn so tight my knuckles turned white. The cold metal felt heavier than it should have, like it was filled with the weight of every memory, every sacrifice, every damn day I spent by Dad's side while Rick was off living his life in California. I could still hear Rick's voice in my head clear as day. The way he barked at me, waving those legal papers around like a weapon. "You just wiped his mouth. I handled his legacy." That's what he said. Like I was just a help. I couldn't believe it. 12 years of wiping Dad's mouth when he drooled. 12 years of changing his diapers, of blending his meals because he couldn't chew, of cleaning him up when he had accidents, of listening to him cry when the pain got too much, of holding his hand when he begged me to stay. 12 years of being the only one who showed up. Rick? He was gone. Out in California, chasing his career, living in some fancy apartment, flying to Europe for work. He'd send the occasional text or email, usually when he wanted an update on Dad's condition. But when the hard part came, when Dad needed someone to bathe him, to change him, to sit with him in the hospital after the seizures, Rick was nowhere to be found. But now that Dad was gone, Rick was front and center. He flew in the day before the funeral, wearing a tailored suit, sunglasses on his head, acting like the golden sun. He gave a polished eulogy at the funeral, talking about Dad's legacy, like he'd been part of it. He cried at the right moments, shook hands with all the guests, and smiled for the cameras when the local paper showed up. I didn't say much. I just sat in the front row, holding my hands in my lap, staring at the casket. The day after the funeral, Rick came by the house with a lawyer in tow. Walked in like he owned the place. Said Dad had left everything to him in the will. The house, the bank accounts, the old Chevy in the garage, the retirement fund. I asked to see the will, and Rick waved a paper in my face. Said Dad named him executor and sole heir. That was that. No discussion. No room for argument. "Pack your things," Rick said, standing in the living room like a king in his castle. "You've got till the end of the week." I could barely speak. This was my home. My life. And then he said it, that thing that's burned into my brain. "You just wiped his mouth. I handled his legacy. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing." I left without a word. I couldn't stay and argue. I couldn't fight him. I just packed 2 suitcases, barely anything, really. A few clothes, some pictures, a couple of small keepsakes. I sat on the curb with the urn in my lap, watching the house like it was a movie on a screen. I could see Rick inside, walking from room to room, already making plans, already acting like it was all his. He didn't even look at me as I sat there. And that's when it hit me. "You forgot one thing," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of passing cars. He didn't know. He didn't know about the letter Dad wrote. He didn't know about the video Dad recorded on my phone. He didn't know about the bank account in my name, the one Dad had me set up years ago, the one he told me not to touch unless something like this happened. Dad wasn't stupid. He knew Rick. He knew what Rick would do. And now it was my turn. Rick thought he'd won. But he didn't know the storm that was coming. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on a motel bed, staring at the ceiling, gripping that urn like it was the only thing tethering me to this world. My phone buzzed over and over. Text from Rick, cold and smug. Hope you find a place to stay. Don't drag this out, okay? Dad would want you to move on. Every word made my stomach twist. I stared at the text until the words blurred. My mind felt like it was buzzing, like a swarm of bees was trapped inside my skull. I thought about how I used to sit in that living room, feeding Dad soup, massaging his feet when they cramped, holding a spoon to his mouth because he couldn't hold it himself. I remembered the nights when he'd cry and say, "I'm sorry I'm a burden." I told him he wasn't. I told him I loved him, and I meant it. And now Rick was in there, feet up on the coffee table, probably drinking a beer, talking about how he'd handled the estate. I felt sick. But then I remembered the letter. It wasn't much, just a few pages Dad had scribbled out in his shaky handwriting a few months before he passed. He asked me to help him write it, but he signed it all himself. The video was the real kicker. I remembered the day we made it, Dad sitting up in his hospital bed, wearing one of his old flannel shirts. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. He wanted to leave something behind, just in case Rick tried to pull something. He spoke slowly, but clearly, into my phone's camera. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And it means Rick is probably trying to take everything." He smiled a little, but it was sad. "Let me be clear, I love both my sons, but Rick doesn't get everything. He wasn't here. He didn't care for me. I know what he's like. If there's any fight about my estate, I want this video shown. I want it known that I intended for the house to go to my son who took care of me, Jason. That was me. Dad had signed a separate statement that day too, the one we put in the safety deposit box. He told me to keep it safe. I had. I sat up straight in bed, heart pounding. I still had the key. I still had the letter. I still had the video. Rick thought I was weak. He thought I'd walk away quietly. Not a chance. I spent the next day making calls. I found a lawyer who actually listened. I showed him the video, the letter, the bank statements. He told me we had a case, maybe not an easy one, but a case. Rick had filed the will, but the signature was off. My lawyer flagged it right away. He called in a handwriting expert, and we compared Dad's old signatures with the one on Rick's will. They didn't match. Not even close. That's when the cracks started to show. I remembered something else too. Dad's nurse, Teresa. She'd been around for years. She'd seen everything. I called her and asked if she'd testify. She said yes, without hesitation. She'd seen Rick visit Dad once, years ago, for 15 minutes. That was it. When I called Rick and told him we were contesting the will, he laughed. Actually laughed. "You don't have the stomach for this, Jason. Just let it go." I told him to wait for the paperwork. Rick didn't know how deep this went. He didn't know Dad had left me a recording for the bank manager too, giving me full access to an account Rick didn't even know existed, an account with enough in it to fight this battle, to take it all the way. He thought I was broke, beaten down. He had no idea. I looked at the urn sitting on the table next to me and whispered again. "You forgot one thing, Rick. Dad never forgot me." The fight was just getting started. Rick thought he was untouchable. When my lawyer sent him the formal notice that we were contesting the will, he called me that night, furious. He ranted, threatened, called me names I won't repeat. Said I was a loser, pathetic. Nobody who wiped Dad's mouth while I handled his legacy. His voice was venom. But I stayed calm. I told him we had the letter, the video, the bank statements. And I told him I wasn't backing down. He cursed and hung up. What Rick didn't know was that things were about to get much worse for him. My lawyer dug deeper. It turned out Rick had forged more than just the will. He'd taken out loans in Dad's name when Dad was too sick to even hold a pen. He'd drained part of Dad's retirement account through fraudulent transfers. And the kicker? He had sold one of Dad's properties years ago, pocketed the money, and told no one. When we presented this to the court, Rick's face turned white as a sheet. His lawyer stuttered, trying to make excuses, but the judge wasn't buying it. The handwriting expert testified. The nurse, Teresa, took the stand and spoke about how I was the only one there for Dad, how Rick barely showed up. The bank manager confirmed the voice in the video matched the man who set up the account, my father. And the video? The moment it played in the courtroom, you could hear a pin drop. Dad's voice came through, clear as day, saying, "If there's any fight about my estate, I want this video shown." His eyes locked on the camera, his voice steady even though he looked frail. He named me, Jason, as the one who took care of him, as the one who should get the house, the truck, everything. The judge ruled in my favor. Not just that, but Rick was ordered to pay back the money he stole, plus penalties. When the dust settled, he lost everything, his fancy car, his apartment in California, even the watch he always bragged about. And that wasn't all. The state opened an investigation into the fraud. The forged will. The fraudulent loans. The theft. Rick was arrested for elder financial abuse and fraud. The last time I saw him was in court, wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking like a caged animal. I won. But I didn't walk away unscathed. The court fight drained me. I was tired, raw, and honestly bitter. I spent so long fighting for Dad's legacy, I didn't even know what my own life looked like anymore. I stood in that old house, the one that still smelled like him, holding the urn, and I finally let myself cry. 12 years gone? But I was free. I fixed up the house, painted the walls, replaced the old carpet, kept Dad's recliner right where it was. I even took his old fishing rods out of the garage and set them up on the wall. And then, I did the one thing Rick would never expect. I sold the house. I sold it for a fair price to a young couple just starting out, a family who could build new memories there. I took the money, and I left Harrisburg behind. I didn't want the house anymore. I didn't want the memories, the ghosts. I wanted peace. Before I left, I scattered Dad's ashes in the river where we used to fish. I stood there alone, watching the water carry him away, and I whispered, "I did what you asked, Dad. It's over now." As for Rick? Last I heard, he's still in prison, serving time for what he did. And I'm not sorry. Not one bit. Dad always said, "What's done in the dark will always come to light." He was right. Rick thought he could steal our father's legacy. But in the end, he lost everything. And I found peace. That's the real legacy. The one Rick could never touch. The day the judge read the verdict, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Rick wasn't just stripped of the house and the money, he was exposed. The forged will? A felony. The stolen funds? A federal crime. When the judge laid it all out, how Rick had used Dad's Social Security checks, cashed in parts of his retirement, sold that property in Dad's name without telling anyone, the courtroom went dead silent. Rick tried to protest, to bluster his way out of it, but the prosecutor wasn't having it. "Mr. Callahan," the judge said, staring straight at Rick, "you've shown a pattern of deceit and theft, exploiting your father when he was vulnerable. This is elder financial abuse, plain and simple." Rick's lawyer asked for probation. The judge shook his head. "No. Rick got 7 years in federal prison." I sat there, stunned. I expected the win, but prison time? That was the hammer dropping. Rick was led away in cuffs. He looked at me over his shoulder, eyes wild, like a caged animal. He mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I didn't care. He was gone. And then it hit me. I wasn't clean either. 12 years of my life had been swallowed by Dad's care. I had no job, no savings, no friends left. My health was shot. I developed high blood pressure, back pain from lifting Dad, and anxiety that kept me up at night. I thought I'd feel triumphant. But instead I felt hollow. After the dust settled, I tried to move back into the house, but I couldn't do it. Every room was a reminder. The stained carpet where Dad's bed used to be. The sink where I'd wash his medication cups. The faint smell of rubbing alcohol in the air. It was like living in a mausoleum. I thought about selling the house, and when I finally did, it felt like tearing off a limb. I sold it to a young couple, just like I'd planned, but I sold it too cheap. Way too cheap. My lawyer told me I could have gotten at least 50 grand more, but I didn't care. I just wanted out. I packed the urn in the front seat of my car and drove away, leaving the house behind me like a bad dream. But the story wasn't over. A few months later, I got a call. The IRS. Turns out, when Rick forged Dad's will and drained his accounts, he didn't pay taxes on any of it. And because the accounts were technically still under Dad's name, and I'd helped manage some of Dad's care expenses under a shared account, they came after me too. I spent the next year fighting the IRS, going back and forth with paperwork, hiring an accountant I couldn't afford. My credit tanked. I was drowning in stress, barely keeping it together. I thought I'd been the good son. But in the eyes of the government, I was just another signature on the wrong form. It was a nightmare. I ended up having to pay back a portion of the taxes, money I didn't have. I drained what little I got from the house sale, picked up odd jobs, even worked as a janitor at a strip mall just to make ends meet. I was angry. At Rick. At Dad. At the whole damn system. But mostly, I was angry at myself, for letting my life get swallowed by someone else's mess. I carried that urn everywhere for months. Couldn't let it go. It sat on my nightstand, in the passenger seat of my car, sometimes even on the table when I ate. It was like Dad was still haunting me, reminding me of everything I lost. One day, I drove back to the river where we used to fish. I stood there, holding the urn, feeling the wind on my face, the cold biting into my skin. And I just let it go. I opened the urn and let Dad's ashes pour into the water, watching the current take him away. It was quiet, except for the wind in the trees. I whispered, "Goodbye, Dad. I hope you're finally at peace." And then I walked away. I didn't look back. Rick's still in prison, last I heard. He tried to appeal, but they denied it. He's got a long stretch ahead of him, and not much waiting for him on the outside. As for me, I'm still rebuilding. I'm in a small apartment now, working at a hardware store, just trying to stay afloat. My back still hurts. My savings are gone. But I'm free. No more secrets. No more ghosts. No more wiping mouths while someone else takes the credit. In the end, the house, the money, the legacy, it wasn't worth it. I paid a price, too. But Rick paid the ultimate one. And that's the part he never saw coming. That's the part he forgot. In the end, I was the one left standing. Barely. But still standing.